All right. Welcome back to Rise to Liberty podcast. Um, thank you so much for putting up with these technical difficulties. We're going to run through this real quick. Uh, just wanted to say a thank you to Nadu Shave Company. They have the balls to sponsor this show. I mean, there's a reason why your dad and your grandpa used to use these single blade safety razors. They're much better for your skin. I have an issue with getting like ingrown hairs and stuff, and so I never shave. But with this, you can avoid all of those all of those issues. Not to mention, the days of big shave are over. Stop buying this plastic multi-blade China-made crap. Purchase from a company that actually cares about you. It is veteran owned, family operated, and you can go to nadeaushaveco.com, NADEAUSHAVECO.com. Use promo code RISE15 for 15% off your order. Nadu Shave Co., where tradition beats modernity. All right, today's guest goes by Gray. As you can see, he's wearing a wonderful mask and keeping his true identity a secret. And I think as we get into this, you'll figure out why. So I would like to say thank you so much, Gray, for coming on. And what do you say we get into this?
Thank you for having me. Let's go.
All right. Just real quick, anyone scan that little QR code that pulls up all the cool stuff. I'll leave that on for just a minute before I switch. Now, Gray, uh, who are you? As much as you can answer that question.
All right. Well, I'm just some guy. I happen to be born into the crossroads of, a certain type of religion or culture and upbringing where that intersected with some military and intelligence programs that are going on worldwide.
And those programs are what specifically?
We get into what's known by many names, but behavioral modification, human asset programs, special access programs, you know, operational, ongoing programs that are derived from research done in MK Ultra. So we're talking about what's commonly known as mind control projects.
Now, working in this space, I've actually come across many people who, for one, don't even know what that is, or a lot of people don't even care. I've noticed. I've brought up certain issues, and they're just like, "Oh, that's neat." Anyways, about football, and that drives me nuts. Um, so you were directly affected by some of these spin-off programs, and I think it would be useful for people to understand that the term MK Ultra is like an umbrella. It covers many things. Um, so exactly what I guess without we're going into the detail that you're comfortable with, what what did you experience? What were you trained to do? Like what happened?
Sure. So just to give a very brief background, focusing on my upbringing, which was originally under my grandfather on my father's side, who was a World War II veteran and was an air engineer in World War II. Aside from that, he worked on NASCAR and was responsible for some of the advancements, early advancements in the industry. So was very talented as a mechanic and an engineer. And because of that, he was tapped into the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, which is kind of loosely known as the predecessor to the CIA. Now, getting pulled into these programs and having been through war himself, he was of the mindset that understood that by any means necessary, that, understood there was no rules in war, when it comes to preparedness, being ready and protecting, yourself, your family, your loved ones, your country, right? Your people. And, he ended up getting into some of these specialized programs, which involve personnel and their families mandatory undergoing certain protocols and procedures in order to keep things hush, because humans are the very weak element of this. So there has to be certain things in place, techniques that encourage extreme discretion, right? Kind of ingrained discipline in someone. And some of these techniques are very rough. And so eventually, just even having his own offspring in NASCAR and other activities, he was all for the high risk, high reward anyways. So eventually, when it came to his grandchildren and things had progressed, I was entered in one of these programs. So how I was affected, what I was raised to do, well, they already have genetic profile and stuff like that for families, and there is long-term studies in the program, so it was definitely geared towards me being a certain something. But as with anybody that falls in these umbrellas, there's a variety of tests to determine the aptitude and then best route going forward. But I will say, as part of these programs, I was put in an environment where it's not only enabled but encouraged, instigated for me to be preyed upon as a child. And, and that did happen. And that sort of thing helped kind of, you hear of repressed memories and, dissociation, because, if something gets so bad and confusing, you kind of dissociate. And, certain things, when they're done to a child, kind of interrupt the developmental process and integration process of different parts of the brain as it develops, and encourage, dissociation or, repressed memories, amnesia. It all gets very blurry, but essentially that can be built on in a structured manner that's been researched over decades. And even in some circles, techniques similar have been practiced in, secret societies under occult terms. Essentially, it's dark neuroscience and behavioral psychology that's applied, through a series of rites and rituals, trials and tribulations. So, involved me being put through very strenuous circumstances when I was young. A lot of very hard circumstances that some children didn't make it through. In addition to all this, I came from a very poor family, and a lot of very poor situations are preyed upon, and there is a whole circuit, and again enabled or encouraged to pull subjects from for these programs. Anyways, eventually, by the time I was four, I was essentially being preyed upon by my next door neighbor, who was also part of this network and with the alphabet agencies and so on and so forth. And they were a husband-wife combo that were funeral directors and morticians, another generational trade. And this started my early conditioning for, forensic cadaver analysis, desensitization around the bodies, and so much more. It gets into some very dark occult techniques as well that have been designed, specifically to elicit certain circumstances. From there, I was also, routed into these, into GATE and these gifted and talented education programs, which recently have become a little bit more known on the internet. And I've actually been speaking out about, GATE and associated since 2013. And, if you go over everything, it's indisputable that there is an element of this. So I was routed into that as well. And essentially, say that someone, just lived a random organic life and, ended up going into the military, and then, ended up, they also at the same time were pursuing an education in linguistics, and then end up getting tapped, and, say the CIA wants to enroll them, and they, learn, go through additional curriculum and training to become a spy, right? So, someone may be able to excel in certain abilities and already have an aptitude. But when you are grooming a child from young, and that certain set of circumstances, for example, being preyed upon will build up rage, obviously the underlying disassociation. If you mess with something enough, if you mess with the child, if you mess with something, if you train a child, if you train a dog since young, you can really start training it more and more and more to where, they have a saying, you can't teach old dogs new tricks. To an extent, that's true. So, all along this, the types of games, and I was raised by the good old boys that really, were this background, intelligence culture that, the good old boys, that,
Yeah.
that says enough. But, so what I learned as a kid, some kids are learning about Santa Claus, right, and expecting presents, and I'm learning their version of what I was told, obviously, of how the world's ran, who the world's ran by, a different religion that I'm told has ran the world, and I'm, go through certain techniques and certain, essentially stage plays, and perhaps there's real elements to it, but in my opinion, that's regardless, which I like to address it thoroughly in a nuanced manner. But when I was young, while other kids believed in Santa Claus, I was going through things that made me believe that I had been invoked with demonic spirits to give me power, and that it was my duty, for full oath and loyalty, to serve the organization, to serve who they served, and by any means necessary, so on and so forth, and that the penalty for failure or failing to try is death. I was taught little games, of, other kids are playing stuff. You hear about like yellow punch bug or something,
Yeah.
when I was young, the game was to, see which car has been visible in the area behind us when we're traveling the longest. Things like this, right? Start playing games and word games that kind of get you into cryptics, like to, cryptology, to a way where it's natural and fun and you're engaged in it as a game, to where you build it as a building block and you do it so naturally that it's going to be near impossible for someone to ever practice and acquire that level of talent and be able to integrate it into actual operations in life, and kind of like, nonchalantly, you understand?
Yeah.
So I was really groomed in a variety of ways, put in situations, some situations put through in a way where the ones orchestrating these programs could have plausible deniability, but I was carried through a sequence of events and situations and routed into, certain education curriculums, various clubs, camps, blah, 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 in order to groom me for these future positions, of many things. One of the strong things on the way being would be, there's many terms for this, but for all intents and purposes, an assassin, a body launderer.
Yeah, and we'll get into that. So would it be the right thing to say that this is very methodical, very planned out, with known intentions of the outcomes, child abuse?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And in some circumstances, the people orchestrating this are just creating a huge environment for this sort of thing to be perpetrated, just to have like the very young sort of, abuse and stuff perpetrated in order to pull a pool from. So there's kind of like a free flowing area where they just pick the best subjects from, and then if they get entered into the actual programs from there, super methodical, a means to an end. The people involved at the top know exactly what they're doing. There's levels of maliciousness along the way because it is so compartmentalized. And aside from the splitting and the trauma that actually splits into different personalities or ego states, or if you want to get scientific, neural networks, dissociative brain states, whatever you want to call it, that's the very traumatic part and all that. But then some of these compartmentalized aspects are just serious training. Sometimes the same training that's given to adults is given to children in these programs, and the people administering this training are not malicious per se. And I'm sure they are provided with a reason that they are, training kids and stuff like that. It's like a fun grooming program that often there'll be field trips tied in with gait and so on and so forth. Just as one example.
So just to give a little bit of a timeline, so Project MK Ultra kind of came out of some other programs that is the OSS, correct? The
Well,
OSS led to the CIA, but then
so World War II, you have the Office of Strategic Services, which is like the main intelligence stuff with the U.S. And I mean, yeah, if you get into the formation of this, it really goes into global intelligence and kind of
yeah,
like the shadow group of intelligence that's really running things and mixed in with the heads of industry and so on and so forth. But yeah, the OSS basically was the predecessor to the CIA. As World War II ended, there was Project Paperclip. Before that, there was like Project Sunrise or something, which was OSS, I think, or Army. And anyways, Paperclip brought over a bunch of the Nazi scientists that were already studying behavioral modification and stuff like this in
yeah,
Auschwitz, and they were doing a lot of that testing. And then came over here, the heads of it went to work for NASA, went to work for this, went to work for that. And then, MK Ultra started, which continued a lot of that research. And also, Russia simultaneously got, back in the Soviet Union, got a bunch of those scientists as well. I
yeah.
believe Japan also got some. And then from there, they also then were right into the Cold War with the race. So like everybody, it was cat was out of the bag. Everybody was already experimenting with this stuff in World War II. Plus, when they found out everybody else was, everybody's pointing at each other as an excuse and a reason to escalate and further push this important research. Regardless of the human cost.
So it looks like, at least from the research I've done, people can track the umbrella of Project MK Ultra. It looks like from Alan Dulles, who was the CIA director at the time, back to May 12th, 1952. So this is how far back we're talking, and then everything kind of spiders down from there. It kind of spider webs out from there. Um, the MK Ultra project kind of seems like it's best known for the LSD experiments, but it's so much more than that.
It's a
Um,
whitewashing. Yeah.
yeah. Um, uh, yeah, that's a perfect term for it. So one question I do have about all of this. So you said that there's like profiles of these families, um, and this is tapping on, I guess, gate a little bit, which and whatever it's called now, whatever it was called then, but they kind of funnel everyone, right? Because they have to be able to find the people they want in these programs. So we're all being touched by this, correct?
Absolutely. So under the umbrella, because there's, they do a whole lot on specific people, right? And then these people obviously have this level of mind control and disassociation that they can kind of bury this from, and they can do really controlled research and development with these people. But they have much broader ranges. I mean, just going on declassified stuff way back from MK Ultra, it's documented fact that they were doing this on populations. I mean, they were, testing things on whole towns, water supplies, so much more. I mean, there are things being tested wide scale, very wide
Yeah.
scale. Yeah, that's just how it goes. And there's a wide range of things. And people need to understand also, when we're talking about behavioral modification, this isn't just about programming, sleepers, programming super soldiers, if you want to call them that, which, I'm not a fan of any of these terms, but you got to communicate.
Yeah.
Whether you want to program spies, assassins, when you want to program sex slaves, whatever you want, that's just one aspect. You have to understand that this actually ties in with, I guess, what people would call transhumanism and different development techniques, because you have a lot of these people that get inserted in this research and development and everything. But you also have people that are at the very top that, are handing down like where the buck stops. And it's very hard to get these places. But, techniques that they learn that end up being very useful and helping someone develop in positive ways, because there are, even though the methods are in many cases the most extreme and traumatic and horrible and unethical, there are valid developmental benefits. If you look at it through a unbiased lens, there are. And the people at the top, once stuff is like tried and true and tested, they're using this to, develop themselves and to just, suck all the life out of everybody else that goes through all the horrible testing and take only the positive aspects, skim the cream off the top.
Yeah.
That's what these people are doing. So it actually umbrellas out into affecting everybody, because we're doing way back through social engineering and propaganda, through media, which is
Yeah.
completely, I mean, it's down to frequencies that they are blanketing on people. This stuff is all real, and if you look, there's scientific basis for all of it too. If we take any one individual aspect, want to have a debate, we'll pull up the stuff. I mean, it's black and white, and
Yeah.
a lot of what's black and white, we're talking about stuff that's 20, 30 years old plus. I mean, do you know the recent technological advancements that's just in the public sector? Do you know I mean, people can't
Yeah.
even fathom, and they don't want to. And they say, oh, well, this would get out. Oh, we'd hear about it. Oh, we'd hear about it. Okay, what classified projects do you hear about? What are you talking about? You
Yeah.
only know what leaked and that they talk about. And like what people know, for example, about the Snowden stuff. Did you know that less than 5% of what was leaked ever hit the public mainstream media? I mean,
Yeah.
less than 5%, less than 5% of what was leaked. Like, people don't have any idea what's going on with this. They don't have the capacity. They don't feel like they could do anything. Why do they want to hear about it? If they do hear about it and want to do something, then it's going to be an upsetting feeling if they truly feel like they can't. Or, then it can get scarier. You're getting messed with. Stuff can happen. Like, it's, everybody's worried about the day-to-day of their own family. I'm not blaming anybody, but, the more of us that collectively worry about this and start taking sensible, common sense, reasonable actions, empowering ourselves, the less that lone dissenters will have to pay horribly for it. You see what I'm saying? So it's kind of like, it doesn't have to be so extreme if everybody just approaches it. We need to keep our heads and be cool about this more than ever when the situation's like this.
Yeah. No, this is some serious shit. Like people have lost their lives. People have spent time in prison, including yourself.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's scary. And what I'm lucky in a lot of ways. I'm lucky, but it was scary to see. I mean, there's a lot of bad people in prison, of course, but it was scary. It was scary to see what was really going on, you
Yeah.
know. And like, I'm a smart guy and knew already the gist of what was going on, but once I experienced it, it was a life change, in many ways, but it's a life changing experience. Feel horrible. These people, and that's just prison. Like, I mean, people doing things behind the scenes are monsters, but they're also weak cowards in a way. They have generational momentum and infrastructure, and they have people doing their light work and fighting against each other instead of finding common ground and reasonably handling things and addressing it. And there are very reasonable things. I'm a very reasonable guy. Maybe the voice changer, some of this, maybe some of the videos I put out, which are strategically theatrical, I would say. But I'm a real like laid back guy. I don't want to be doing this. I've been through a lot of seasons of horrible stuff, but it's my duty to do this with other people that I've seen left a lot worse off than I am, and not even getting into the children, because I didn't come on here to shed tears about this. It's so upsetting.
Yeah. So one thing I kind of wanted to get into, so this trauma-based mind control creates or works off of a condition known as dissociative identity disorder. And I wanted to ask you, what does it mean to disassociate?
Gotcha. So, and getting into semantics, like, it gets very blurry,
Yeah.
So, I mean, some people, when they dissociate, they will go completely in. It's like they black out. Like, if you ever drank too much and blacked out and you just don't remember, but you might kind of feel like embarrassed, like, oh my God, what did I do? What did I say? Like, it can feel like that, you know? But there's a spectrum of dissociation before you completely black out and stuff like that. So, it can kind of feel like an out of body, like, like if someone's saying something and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. This is so horrible. Your heart's speeding. You kind of feel like hot, sweaty. It kind of feels like you're like listening to this, but like, like you're just like observing, right? And it can just kind of start feeling surreal. And you just feel like really spaced out. That's dissociation. If you've ever zoned out driving on the highway, some people, it's known as highway hypnosis. That's a degree of dissociation. So you can space out. You can kind of like be like freaked out and just kind of like not be able to handle it and just be like, whoa, I need to sit down. Whoa, I feel like I almost faint. There's a degree of it, but that's about some examples, I guess.
Well, so basically, normal people could experience a level of dissociation without any really without experiencing like mind control.
Exactly,
It's
exactly. Yeah,
more
a
of a
daydream.
natural thing.
A daydream is dissociation. Now, dissociation is a natural ability and a natural tendency. It's
Yeah.
also factors in hereditary factors can encourage it. That's the important thing. It's basically like dissociation is used since it's kind of like a mental defense and also just like a mechanism just that you do in certain situations. You know, the way that the body functions gets manipulated deliberately, like I said, kind of dark neuroscience,
Yeah.
behavioral psychology. So they specifically apply certain techniques in order to elicit certain outcomes, knowing how dissociation works. So yes, exactly. One will naturally dissociate. However, if someone's been through a series of unethical techniques, then they may have walls formed off where they disassociate. Someone may attach, post-hypnotic suggestions or passwords or spells, which again would be a word, a hypnotic post-hypnotic suggestion, or sequences to activate, whether
Yeah.
you're talking in sleep or military intelligence terms, or you're talking in hocus pocus black magic voodoo, your spells, activation words, whatever, post-hypnotic suggestions, it's all the same thing exactly. We're talking about compartments that's on the severe side of dissociation that have been encouraged through specific techniques to become a complete split separate compartment that
Yeah.
can be called up by an outside party primarily.
And it's so that is that where Project Monarch comes in uh, with the specific intent that they had behind Project Monarch.
Yeah, so Monarch is a generational project because Monarch, the butterflies migrate in the mass gatherings from like New York to Mexico and also go other places. But, like that main one takes about 5 generations to complete and they pass the genetic information down, and just like, that sort of stuff is already known in occult terms like epigenetics, how like, you pass on your talents down and down. And obviously the dissociation is occult. And yeah, they say like minimum of 3 generations, whatever, there's testing and seeing how deeply stuff anchors. But so Monarch is like the generational body. So it's the generational people that are feeding into this in breeding programs because, this is tied in with, all sorts from eugenics to transhumanism to everything. Like this is the complete study of the body and mind and consciousness.
Yeah.
This really envelopes everything. Like, this is really a project that links everything together. People from all walks of life, people from all the tops of industry, politics, influencers, you have your music stars, everything. Like these things link everybody
Yeah.
together. So I'm going off on a tangent here though.
So one thing I do kind of want to get out of the way, and this is something that bothers me. We kind of just touched on it just a little bit, but and this is kind of where correct me if I'm wrong or if you know, but to me that this is kind of where um Project Mockingbird comes into this. Um the I'm not even sure how to phrase it, but making this seem as if it's fake, it's mysticized. It's
Sure.
it's like you said earlier, whitewashed. It's kind of made a joke of. Like now, if you get called a conspiracy theorist, like all of a sudden, just the act of conspiring doesn't exist for some reason. Like,
Sure. Yeah, and let me just round off the Monarch just to explain it
yeah,
because I mean here's the thing is like essentially now monarchs on top of the generational aspect, monarchs are known to rule territories, right? Okay, and it's kind of like a generational ruling and they control different areas. Like it's literally the same thing from way back when you'd have monarchies,
yeah,
dynasties, you'd have kings ruling areas, okay? And then kind of goes, over time to where, oh, the people have enough rise up, split it off, quiet it down, mix up the bloodlines, hide the names, change the face, change the names. We still are ruling this, but we have to divide and then, start up this party that's really our cousins, but that's the opposition, but behind closed doors, we're working together. So, then eventually the bankers, right? And then this, then
yeah,
that. And eventually what they're doing is they're just having everybody in their club. What are you talking about? So it's Monarch. Yeah, people hear this, people hear that. Of course, and one thing I put on mine was, there was recently some code words linked. And guess what? Tamed Monarch comes up in there. Is that Monarch? It doesn't matter what the name is because there's other names and there's like 3 code names, one of them being unclassified for classified projects anyways. So,
yeah,
but the thing is that of course they got people, and they get people in the club, raise them up the way that they're raised. They don't go through the same curriculum as the commoners. They go through the curriculum of like the ruling party, seeing people as less than them, seeing people as numbers, seeing people as either nuisances or helpers, right? And okay, guess what? You're the monarch of this. You're gonna, control this part of media. You're gonna control this part of music, this part of industry. We got you, off in logistics and transportation. We have you in executive. We have you in legislative. We have you in judicial. Okay, separation of powers united. It's monarchy. They're breeding and grooming monarchs to be the best ruler for the territory that they're designated to be in, because everything is mapped out and controlled. And we talk about this, like, well, how is this done? Well, if you go into actually like plans that are already like been into play and also common knowledge, you can see like how FEMA was started as federal emergent military action. And then, like the Rex 84 drills and the start of FEMA tied into the Knights of Malta, the Trilateral Commission, the Council of Foreign Relations, tied into Watchtower, the start of the cocaine and crack epidemic, Armadeus, not Amadeus, Armadeus, and Pegasus, which was, the assassination G7 hit team program that was controlling politics and getting all their people elected, which someone whistle blew on that and then was sent to federal prison under treason and, ended up fighting that case. Like, there's so much, but the thing is that it's all accumulating together. FEMA, with the Rex 84 drills and all this, like they already have the FEMA sections are all regioned up. Everything's already regioned out and everything's already mapped out at the high levels if you look, including entertainment industry. Like, so as far as setting up their people, if you notice, a lot of this talent's generational. Everybody keeps in the club. Everybody gets them in this spot. Like, yeah, are there some people that end up coming in from outside? Of course, but a lot of these people have hidden connections. This is a club. They're grooming people to play a role in a specific part, and people get sent to preside over certain territories. And it's the same occult hierarchy as all these secret societies. That's what people don't know. The military is the same as an occult hierarchy. Gangs have them. Cartels have them, our world has them. All of this goes actually on the same occult pyramidal structure. And it's just crazy to see. But yeah, sorry. That's what people need to understand, that like Monarch is such a big program that it's a generational plan. Everything's bigger than the one person. There's rules set in place.
It's the long con.
It can't even be like, hey, we decide you have to get punished. No, there's rules in place. It's bigger than any people. You can't just dissent. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they're all your people, because some people from outside. It's a machine, a generational plan that's bigger than any one person. You have to see it as a gestalt. It's the sum of this is bigger than any of the individual pieces. As a whole, this is a evil machine.
Yeah. So to kind of get back to you, to fast forward, by the way, anyone who does want to get into the nitty gritty of Gray's story, his YouTube channel is linked in the episode description. Make sure and go watch all his videos. Absolutely incredible story. So to just fast forward a little bit, you had gotten older and you had started learning some things. You had mentioned in one of your videos that you started taking some criminology courses and things similar to this. One question I had about it is, do you believe that you independently made those choices, or do you feel like those choices were made for you?
Well, so there's a spectrum. On some of them, it was more like, at first, until I, like, which is a whole thing to go into, which we won't do here, but like finding out I had a split personality and that weird, it's a lot. But so all along my life, I just thought I was like top dog. I thought I was super slick. Everything would always work out. Stuff would magically, like I thought I was doing it. But no, some of them I ended up like encouraged, and just due to me already being in a situation, like it was the smart decision and like worked out. Some of them was like some people suggested and I'd think about it. Some I was more encouraged to do. But after in hindsight, and also like I've talked to these people that are involved with it. Like I was a little closer to some of like official operations in this than a lot of people. Not many people that were involved at the level I was to happen to speak out, just because it's usually not a smart choice. But But no, absolutely groomed, routed, encouraged for sure. Not only for training, but also a lot of the time to put me in situations that would provide them with plausible deniability and make me seem just like a lone guy, whether it be a wacko or whether I'm studying techniques to do something criminal on my own. Yeah, there was a variety of being routed to certain situations for training and or to provide plausible deniability, for them against myself,
Yeah.
making myself appear a certain way to an outside inspection.
So, and also in one of your videos, you had mentioned that at some point in time, you had wanted to reach out to, the alphabet mafia that wanted to come in and, that's just what I call the 3-letter agencies,
Sure, sure, sure. No, I got you.
but you had wanted to reach out to them, and like you had just mentioned that you thought you were being so slick and all this other stuff, having operational security, but little did you know you were already being watched. So
Yeah.
did you, knowing what you know now, do you feel like you always had somebody that was tailing you basically?
Gotcha. So okay, so and just to provide people, because I guess we didn't go into it here, but so I had a slew of marijuana grow houses and was involved with all sorts of criminal activity, right? And like had different identities, wouldn't get stuff under my name, wouldn't leave prints, was like doing just extreme methods and like working with different gangs and stuff like that, and like teaching them to get smarter and tighten up on their activities. And then I decided that I wanted to go into intelligence because I was doing vigilante activity against pedos, right?
Yeah.
And
The
also
real bad people.
who I deemed real bad in the drug trafficking, all that, and then started going with human trafficking. But yeah, so I mean, so was there someone watching all along? Yeah, 100%. I was also in a super controlled situation, so that might not be the case for everybody. For me, yeah, and I've also like you gotta understand, like I remember this. I was actually like my split personality would do things that would literally hide it from my conscious personality. You say, how is that even possible? I can explain this at length, and it's scary, and it was scary to face. But like, trust me, the whole process was making me have a split personality that thought my main personality was a bitch. That was literally like, like a lot of the whole thing. It might sound ridiculous, but it makes sense once you explain it. But yes, I mean, some people will just kind of be left alone, and then if they kind of get to a part where they're useful, they might be tapped or something like that. There'll be a spectrum. But as far as my way, I was dealing with people all along, all the way, and like there's like sort of things like mandatory reporting on a schedule and like different numbers. So I was in deep. But yeah, I was joined at the hip all the way and didn't see it. And I didn't see the forest for the trees.
So how, for your specific like type of training or what you had experienced, and I'm not sure if training is necessarily the right word, but we'll go with that.
Yeah, and I did also have official training in places too, just to be clear. But go ahead.
So how many people are we talking, or how many people do you think you could estimate is going through something similar, or even the exact same type of training that you received?
So let me, I guess, get to here with it, because I'm going through different training and stuff like that, and I was in like a very pet project, really compartmentalized off the books. Like the guys really hid me in a few other assets just because like it's a mess already common. And everybody's against each other. Like there's a war going on internally in all this stuff already. It's so dirty. I mean it's every man for themselves to an extent. So eventually I became operations manager, for Region 4 of, some FEMA operations that are training, some of these compartmentalized units, and also training people's, basically, there's whole kind of like Rex 84 type of, drills already like in place and training that's in place for certain events, disaster events happen to commandeer regions, whether certain people need to be apprehended, so on and so forth, right? So as far as people that are programmed deeply like me, that are going through and tied in to the military intelligence, National Guard, kind of like this official link up of basically the Pentagon secret army, right? You know,
Yeah.
you know, human asset, the sleeper program at large, right? That's
The,
like a, you
like
know, the secret army,
Manchurian candidates.
the dark army, you know, whatever people call it, different
Yeah.
stuff. They
Yeah.
have terms Black Awakening, you know, they have Pentagon secret army, and that's something that's been reported on, which you can actually pull up, stuff like that. More, you know, more than people like me, not that many. People that have went through this training, that were running through these trainings whenever I was, you know, running drills and stuff like that. I mean, you know, I personally over over a few years of when I was actually in a position, I personally saw at least 1,000 men that were so highly trained. You know, we're talking about, you know, top of the tier one, you know, top of the tier one, surpassing tier one level of performance,
Yeah.
and qualifications, and, you know, actual operations. Okay. Now we're talking about actually like the Army, so broad spectrum, you
Yeah.
know, tens of thousands of capable people for combat, hundreds of thousands of people that are involved, for sure, that have been programmed. And, you know, it might go higher into the millions, but there's been a lot of interruptions. Not everybody's actually reliable and operational and usable, stuff like that. But it's a staggering number. It's a staggering number.
Yeah.
Obviously, the higher trained and the more reliable in certain levels, you're going to get less and less people.
Yeah.
But then, you know, obviously, like people that were programmed to my level, you know, for example, I was overreaching for, you know.
Yeah. So do you feel like people know that they're in this? Like how many of these people, because I mean there's so many, some
Yeah.
would have to.
Well, and, you know, obviously the amount of people that are talking about this, you know, there's going to be more people who aren't talking about it. And then, you know, the amount of people that are talking about it, there's only going to be so many of them that went through a certain degree of successful training. But you see how many people recently have been talking about GATE and being like, oh my
Yeah.
God, I don't remember. What don't I remember? Oh, why am I
Yeah.
crying? Why am I this and that? You know, it starts coming up. And, you know, if they haven't got to the operational mechanism, the underlying mechanism, that's still intact and still operational. It's extremely
Yeah.
hard to break. I knew about it for years and still couldn't completely. And you know, I've had all the information, all the ability. But anyways, how many people know about it? I mean, most of them don't know about it, but here's the differences. You have people that are sleepers. Basically, none of them are going to know about it. You have people like me that get trained to a certain extent. This is why it ties in with these clubs, with these secret societies, with these groups, because what happens is this ties in. A lot of this behavioral modification, the grooming, the steps and the processes and the curriculum that these children go through is the same as rites, is the same as trials. Yeah. And it's basically, the playbook is taken from these age-old, you know, rites and initiations from, it's known as occult path working. Have you ever seen like the tree of life diagrams,
Yeah.
like occult stuff, and it's like that?
Yeah, yeah.
So like, you know, go through these different rites and trials, assist your development and make you develop a certain way, and you get occult path working. This is all really essentially based on occult path working and different things, undergoing different circumstances at different points, in different ways that make you develop in certain ways. So
Yeah.
people like me that are highly programmed, that are involved so much, that are involved more than they're not, end up going through a process what's called going conscious. Okay, so eventually, when you become a certain age, you come into the fold. A lot of the times, what's trying to do the society is to come into the fold. It will be done in like a ritual that for the first time, someone will be encouraged or manipulated or conscious to partake in an event in their conscious personality. And this will be the event that they get blackmailed and everything, blah, blah, blah. And then eventually, at that point, they actually consciously go into the fold. And then their, you know, back half kind of starts merging because they've done something horrible consciously, right? Without all the manipulation, if that makes sense. So, so it's kind of like that. And some people, you know, go for it all together. And, you know, most of the time they're pretty sure about something before you get someone to that point. Just like if you have something in your life, you know who you can rely on, who you can't. To an extent, sometimes stuff will happen, you'll be wrong, but, you know, and then it's almost like if you hear about like Amish, when they get a certain age, you know, they go into town and they either, you know, come back or stay gone, right? You know, that type of thing. It's almost like that. But yeah, so if you like are really coming in the fold and like you're actually part of the plan, you're part of the group, part of whatever people want to call the cult, whatever, part of the future, right?
Yeah.
Then you what's called go unconscious, and you do become aware. In some cases, not fully aware, but in different degrees of self-aware. And that's really what it gets to, because this is hard stuff to face, and you have to be a cold. If you really are in this consciously, when it gets to that part, you are a cold-blooded motherfucker. It is
Yeah.
horrible, disgusting. And I'm an extreme guy. I have thick skin. I'm not squeamish. Let me tell you, this stuff is horrible, horrible.
Yeah.
But most people are going to have no idea. These people that consciously doing this are the most highly trained, most successful. Killed what they ate. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Clawed their way to the top of this.
Yeah.
That's the people that are conscious that we need to worry about. We have to make space for people to be able to defect, even if they were involved with bad things. Because, these people, everybody involved was one way or another brainwashed as a kid. But, you get to that point, you're making conscious decisions, and, we can't just stand by and allow it to go on, regardless if someone was a victim as well. I was a victim. If I didn't stop it, I would need to be stopped.
So when did you, and I think I know the answer to this, but I would prefer, to hear it from you, but when did you figure out all of this? I know there was a point when you got screwed over on some, basically fucked up trumped up charge, and you were thrown in the hole. And you had to face all of this. And I know you had mentioned something that's how they fucked up with you, because you kind of had to face all of this. Is that when you really faced everything that you had been through at that point?
Yeah, that was the most part. I mean, so what happened was I was running like crazy. My whole childhood, I knew I was molested as a child by my grandfather. And I knew that my parents themselves had been molested because they had talked to me about it, but they left it up to me if we were going to like press charges or pursue it, but like totally encouraged me not to, because it was going to be weird, like like it was just a thing, right? So like I had always like thought back to that and used that as an excuse to never think back again to my childhood, never. And I was like, in the streets, as one would call it, and doing serious activities, tunnel vision, very successful, very motivated, always doing something, always after something. If I wasn't like in grave danger, if there wasn't something didn't happen to someone around me, I wasn't hurt, I wasn't going to jail, there was no reason to investigate anything, right? So I was too busy. So what happened though was there a bunch of stuff started coming up, and I was like, I was also like doing drugs and stuff like that, so I was like burying it, and like a lot of missing time would get explained by that. But what happened was eventually, I woke up in the trauma unit, and I had called my girlfriend in the middle of the night, and basically told her, like that I'm working with the CIA, and like it's things are going bad, right, and this and that. And then she didn't come to and when I woke up in the trauma unit, level 2 trauma, I knew something bad had happened. Like, remember, like I woke up from a dream, like fighting people and all this stuff happening, and just everything that had happened. So like I knew something was wrong, but I had amnesia. And then I started like thinking, and then like shortly after that, I had been arrested and all that. And then when I got arrested for a short time, I put out on house arrest. And at that point, I hadn't done any drugs or anything at all. And so right then, I also had a birthday. So I had a birthday. I didn't have any drugs or anything. And since I grew up never celebrating birthdays or anything, I also like thought back to a birthday. And then right then in that moment when I was on house arrest clean, thought back to my childhood birthday. That kind of like broke the dam, which like stuff had already been stirring. And then all this stuff poured in and I started remembering. And then 16 days later is when I really got trumped up charges. They'd already messed with me before then, but not to say the charges wouldn't be legitimate if I didn't have immunity. But then that's when they hit me with the trumped up charges. After I remembered, I talked to the FBI, I was raising hell. And then they hit me with the trumped up charges, and then I ended up getting fraudulently sent to prison. They had a clerical error. I was supposed to be released. Then they sent me to prison. I kind of like tried to shake them off because they were handling me. I got maxed out. Yeah. And then when I was there, I felt safer than I've ever felt. It felt like a vacation. I was the less stressed I've ever been, and I had no ego. I lost everything. My whole life was a lie. Not only my whole life was a lie, I had been manipulated and was preying on people, not like young people, like, like vigilante activities, but I realized how I was being used by the network. And then like I felt I was lucky to go work for it, and then like all this, and like realized like everything I believed in and actually wanting to do good for people, for humanity, for my country, and all this. Like I realized like, that I had been not only like lied to, but like that I was like felt like I was a dummy and being used in like super like, like they got me,
Yeah.
like, like I was the fool and like
Yeah.
had done horrible things, like felt horrible. Like I had no pride, no ego. Like it was completely, I was nothing. I was melted on the floor. I was humbled before God, whatever you want to call it. It was, it. And then I just took an inventory and, and just was as real as anyone can ever be with themselves, and it's ugly. It hurts, it hurts still. And then just faced it. And also, like a lot of people, when they come out this, they can't face the harsh part of themselves, right?
Yeah.
I was already kind of into a harsh end of things in day to day already, so it wasn't as hard. But also being in prison, I had to not only face it, but I could actually embrace and appreciate it. And I was around people, so like I could even accept the worst of the worst and accept it with love and treat it, because essentially these parts of yourself are raised. I was like raised and brainwashed, telling that I wasn't a human, that I was actually this, and they would like, do like fake surgery. Like, I mean, we're talking about psychotic morticians. They're also necromancers. Like, I mean, it's, and people are like, oh, where's the evidence? Where's the body? It's like incinerated. You know what I'm saying? Like, people are just like have no idea what goes on, and they don't want to. They don't want to.
Well, and why would they leave
bad.
evidence? Like,
these are professionals. The same people that run this are running the top classified operations. Let me ask you this. Why are the statutes for ritual abuse in 4 states? Why do they provide exemptions for government research projects? That's funny. Okay, in 1995, ACHRE, Valerie Wolf, Claudia Mullen, Christina Cola presented testimony and documentation of blindly corroborating evidence, naming code names, places, locations, perpetrators, doctors, so on and so forth, involved with the mass programming of children, and stuff like this. Like, this is like very verified stuff that large groups of people have, have verified. People don't want to hear about it, but like the thing is, people got to hear from the sources, and then look, it's like, okay, so what's keeps on going up? And then, it's hard too for the public, because a lot of this, like, the people really in this, we're not saying certain exact things to the public because it can damper investigations. Because, okay, if I say a name, like everybody can yell out like some perpetrator's name, like Epstein. Anybody can say Epstein now, and like it's not gonna, if you have to like provide like evidence that like you actually cross paths with these people, right? Because it's a commonly known thing. But if 10 people name someone that's not known public and they didn't know each other and they're naming like the exact same cabin in a certain zip code, right? Like, okay, that's something to look into, right? You know, so there's a bunch of that. And when I say a bunch of that, like the only reason certain parts of this aren't getting followed on is because a lot of this is tied in with national security. And a lot of these programs are so deep black. And what goes on, there's limited oversight. Even if the oversight isn't already in the fold somehow, the people running these deep programs will create like a little psyop mini tape. And it could be like some terroristic stuff. It could be like some pedo snuff stuff, whatever it is. They will provide a psyop tape just to show to Congress or limited oversight in order to make them see like, this is what we're up against. This is what we're dealing with. This is the threat. We have to do this. You know, here's the options that we propose. We think it's this one. But either way, like they're giving them the options to pick or not, or like, you know, like they forced their hand, right? And like, you know, the people that are allowed already into limit oversight, like they're picked because they're playing ball and or they're able to be controlled one way or another. Like, I mean, people don't really know how this stuff works, but it's like, look, this all goes into the classified programs. If you look, all the dirty stuff from the drug trafficking to the weapon trafficking to the crimes against humanity and children that has came out, there's never been accountability. Never been accountability. Do you think it stopped? What are you talking about? It's obviously got worse. It's obviously got more industrial, and they've layered it off further. And now it's harder to get to everything, you know, with the technology. If we don't address this now, it's scary what they can do with technology. We might not have a chance to soon. You know, the people aren't programmed like they were when I was a kid now. You know, there's another process to it. You know, and that has its pros and cons as well. But anyways, I'm going off on a tangent here.
No, you're good. So, I mean, obviously this is still continuing. You know, I guess the joke is that, well, I know the CIA and FBI, like they all did these things in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, but they're definitely not doing it now. Right? Like, that's That's the sort of backhanded, twisted joke about it. Um, and I did want to touch on this a little bit. I mean, we could do a whole show about this, but you mentioned the GATE program. Do you kind of want to give a synopsis of what the GATE program is and why that's relevant?
Sure, sure, yeah. So, in 1958, the National Defense Education Act was passed. And that was it was in response to, the Soviet launched Sputnik, which, kind of,
Yeah.
space war, race to the moon, whatever, Cold War, right? So we had to get into, education. We got to make sure that we're raising the best and the brightest, right, from young,
Yeah.
because everybody else was. And I mean, if you look at it today, you can tell. Back then, they were starting to see the signs. American culture in ways can be more lax than Russia or China. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
all people are disciplined. It's scary. Not that I see things more than country. I see it like people versus class, because they're
Yeah.
trying to consolidate power. That's
Yeah.
what's going on now. Large consolidation of power, especially through technology right now. But anyways, so National Defense Education Act in 1958. Now, that was the funding for all this stuff in gifted programs. Gifted programs also go alongside like special needs programs and also like correctional disciplinary programs, right? So your kids that are troubled youth are going into these programs. Your kids that have special needs, whether they're like autistic and talented in certain ways, neurodivergent, or whether they're like, unfortunately handicapped in certain ways, like, that falls under the umbrella. And then the actual gifted, that's kind of all under the same umbrella.
Yep.
And then one of the first searches for these types of people was called Project Talent. Now, Project Talent was headed by John Flanagan. Now, John C. Flanagan was a World War II aviation psychologist that was responsible for selecting combat fighter pilots. Now, that's one of the most strenuous jobs, mentally and physically. Just the G-force. There's so much to learn, so much responsibility, the training, and they also take care of people to the highest standards. People hear this about the Air Force and different branches, but that's, irrelevant. So anyways, that's John C. Flanagan. Now, the guy that was responsible for that made Project Talent, which was to select people that would be essentially put into these gifted programs and things under that umbrella. So the guy selecting combat fighter pilots is made to do that. This guy is also responsible for critical investigative technique or critical incident technique, which this is basically how they like investigate and handle things, incidents and stuff like that. This can be like, for example, on a battleship, right? Stuff like that. This can be at an army base, kind of keep everything internal. We don't want, people to know the problem handled internally. It kind of mirrors the same way things were handled in like the Catholic Church or other churches, right? Where you can kind of keep it all in-house. This type of thing is done at school with incidents and stuff like that. It's kind of like a technique to keep everything contained, right? Encapsulated, encircled, okay? So John C. Flanagan also ran American Institute for Research, which was the program which was the place that was evaluated Stargate. They were hired to evaluate Stargate, Operation Stargate, and they said it didn't provide anything useful. So the person that made the Project Talent, the ones that searches for people to put in these gifted programs, also had started the same thing that claimed Stargate didn't work. Now, why is that relevant? Because these same types of projects with Stargate used Monroe Institute curriculum and used Silva mind control and ESP Ultramind curriculum, which is like, meditation techniques and, binaural beats and stuff that gets your brain in frequency, different techniques like this. They had certain curriculum that is essentially evaluating gifted children, okay?
Yeah.
Now, going back to the gifted and talented education, going back to the National Defense Education Act, one of the people that really went into this, that wrote the books on all this curriculum, was John C. Gowan. You have a lot of John C's here. But so John C. Gowan, if you look into his books, and he was like, everybody built off his stuff in curriculum. He was into positive disintegration, which is essentially occult path working, and also dissociation, going through techniques and trauma, right, to affect development, right? And was also into everything. He basically converts every single like occult term into like a scientific term, going from everything from all the different rituals, just everything. I could sit here and go from every single PK psychic ability. Like, he wrote the books on all these, I got a interview I did where it goes down all of them, and like you can pull up his books. But yeah, I mean, it goes over everything. So essentially, these gifted and talented educations, MGM, TAG, GATE, SAGE, CORE, ENCORE. You go to NSA's tied in with these, with STEAM, STEM. This is all NSA backed from the very beginning. This is for national defense. This is what this has always been. And, they poll children not only for intelligence and stuff, but they have ways to test and can identify these children that perhaps have been in certain situations that have that dissociative base. If they were preyed upon as children or come from generational families, they end up getting also routed into these places. And this GATE and all the related puts them through a variety of tests and stuff, and will further subjects in different areas to go into certain programs. Does everybody end up as a sleeper? No, of course not. But a large amount do. And a large amount of people that tested that didn't end up with the full programming still underwent some techniques or were administered something that will give them temporary memory loss. You hear a lot of people that are like fluoride swish. There's fluoride swishes. Well, I can guarantee that I had a short-term memory loss agent mixed in with it. How does that relate to MK Ultra? Obviously, they did the testing for all the short-term, long-term memory affecting agents and everything. They tested a variety of substances with MK Ultra so they could learn what affects people in all the different ways, from scopolamine to Tylenol,
I mean, so, how do we know that was even fluoride?
Exactly. And it wouldn't matter, whatever it is, they have different stuff, water, cookies, milk and cookies, and then on top of that, they're doing the meditation techniques and encouraging it in different ways. But yeah, and like, if it's obviously a lot to go into now, but it sounds like a lot, and people want to dismiss it from what they hear at first off, what they don't know. But if you get into like, okay, so how do these techniques work and stuff? Once it gets broke down, it's actually really simple and makes sense. And a lot of this is like, what they do is put people into like, kind of like the dream time, like theta delta state, and kind of like, really dark neuroscience, behavioral neuroscience, and affect the brain in certain ways where they affect autonomous autonomous, functions. And then also, of course, can kind of like embed certain information. They have, technology that can assist it. And I expose a lot of that in some of my videos when it comes to like, like the electromagnetic cranial stimulation helmet, where they can just literally send pattern messages where you can't even hear it, and it will control your whole experience. People can think they met God. They can think they met aliens. I'm not saying this stuff isn't real. I'm just saying that it 100% is faked or simulated for behavioral modification purposes. But yeah, GATE ties in with these hugely. It has always funneled into these programs, and there is a staggering number of people that went to this. I mean, a staggering number.
Yeah, and this is actually where kind of our conversation began. This is like when I reached out to you, because I started noticing all the conversations around GATE, and all of a sudden memories started flooding back. And I mean, I remember that fluoride swish very clearly. I remember taking the note home and, having parental permission to come in and everything. It was just wild. I remember the hearing tests, the extrasensory perception tests, that they would have us do.
And it was, and all that.
Yeah. And like even hypnosis in the classroom, which, I look back on that now and I'm like, that is the craziest shit ever.
Yeah. And there was articles, there was an article exposing that. One thing just to make sure is clear too. So also, if you put the timeline of the National Defense Education Act against the MK sub projects that are known to deal with children, there's overlap. You can see how it lines up, and it was like, oh, that's, it's very clear once you look closely at Flanagan and Gowan and then all the rest of the players. And even The Godfather before that, going back like to World War I and stuff like that, was into eugenics. I forget what his name is, but yeah. It's pretty clear. But yeah, it's they're testing everybody because everywhere's doing it, and like, as from a national security perspective, we better, especially if you look at now like how the young would be raised up. If you're looking at it like on a, hey, I'm for US, and even if there are allies or not, like, we have to be prepared to go against China or Russia. Like, we definitely don't have the community discipline and like the work together, like, function. I mean, not that they don't have their own division and problems over there too, but like, I would be worried if I was in charge of like being war ready as a nation, because they have stuff going on over there. So like, sure, it can make sense, but the oversight is so corrupt. And then at the very top of these things, they are in these worldwide clubs. It goes way above geopolitics. They control geopolitics. You know, they're uniting all separations of powers. They have a monopoly on the world. And it doesn't matter what else is involved, because people can go off in any spiritual direction, any scientific direction, anything. Like, it's no secret that bad people are doing bad things. And you know, where we can start, you know, where we can start is actually addressing it. Okay, what's the major things that didn't actually get any accountability? It's like, you know, what? It's just, you know, these real big subjects, you see what doesn't actually get addressed, and they keep people fighting over this, fighting over that, keep them dangling with that carrot. You know, we got to get our heads on straight and address this, because, you know, there is no national security perspective excuse. Absolutely not. That, you know, not at this point. It is illegitimate. It is corrupt, you know, and there are crimes against humanity being perpetrated by a smaller and smaller number of people. And right now, a lot of the weird stuff that's going on, and why all this is coming to light, is because of heavy infighting war going on at the upper echelons, you know, struggling to control the top of this pyramid as the power is getting consolidated, which we see, you know, doing exponentially quicker, you know, through technology and through finances, especially over these past few years. You're seeing as all the small businesses die. You know, we're seeing a bigger divide in the classes, you know, and that's what they're wanting, the ruling and the worker class. That's all they want. The less amount of people where it's manageable, but we keep enough people to do the small work, and then we throw them the breadcrumbs that they need. You know, they're just, it's the same
so
thing
crazy.
that's been going on. You know, it's Rome, right? You know?
Yeah. Well, and it's, once you start looking at it, it's so clear. Like,
if you're willing to face it, it's an uncomfortable truth, because who wants to live like that? Because there's enough going on where you can keep yourself happy or preoccupied in most cases. I mean, depending on what your situation is, you know, and I start feeling sorry for myself. I think to some of these, you know, children, like, I mean, no matter what, these programs are what, like, you know, because the programs are like the worst thing ever in my mind, right? But then I see, like, you know, where people are getting bombed and stuff and never even had the chance to get to speak out about a program. Like, it's so unnecessary. And these are the things, you know, and then people are fighting over, like, you know, between this stuff. Like, it's, you know, there is a small group of men that are really desensitized about this and just see people as they're going to do this anyways. Let's control it and work to the benefit. And then we're going to develop and make it better. Like, you know, these sick, twisted people don't even think they're the bad guys. Of course, in some ways, they're doing things, but like, they develop into a creature and they're doing this stuff. They're doing, like, you know, like, it's baby steps, you know, baby steps over time. They get desensitized and become something horrid. It is disgusting. It is ugly. And I've been in the room with these people above billionaires. The only reason I ever got to that point was because I just happened to be in certain ways. I was very talented. I had aptitude for certain things. I was effective. I was timely. You know, it just got me to the point where I was in the room with some of these people and would see what they were. And I was terrified when I saw the men really doing these things. You know, a lot of it, like I said, is generational momentum.
Men.
Yeah, because, I mean, don't get me wrong. A lot of these people are talented.
Shell of a human.
Yeah, a lot of these people are talented and smart and cunning in ways. Don't get me wrong. These aren't dummies. But it's nothing that they could keep going by themselves. This is on our backs. This is on our backs, 100%. You know, and we need to do this peacefully, because don't think that these people don't have switches they could, you know, flip to make this bad for everybody. Like, you know, it's fine. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, did I want vengeance? All this? Of course. But it's not even about that. Like, all we need is just, like, I don't even want to talk about it. I just want to erase the bad. Let's get with the good. Let's just live and make everything all right. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I don't want to extra, like, let's not, like, make a show out of, like, you know, making this painful for people and, like, you know, oh, you got to pay, you got to suffer. No, just clean this mess and get it going for people. Let people live, you know? Let people live free.
So that leads me to want to ask you, after you figured out all of this stuff, when you obviously got to a point where you said enough is enough, and you decided to come out, and you decided to actually do some real shit, actually get some things done. What made you decide to take that route? Because there's obviously so many of these people who don't.
Yeah, and I want to make it clear, because I talk different ways about this, and by no means with me going on a rant am I ever putting down someone for not doing enough or not doing anything. my heart goes out to anybody that was involved with this. You know, you have all my love and support. You know, you have my compassion and empathy. You know, I went through it. I know. Did I go through exactly what you went through? No. And I wouldn't even want to pit our experiences against each other.
Yeah.
My worst, my 10 is my 10. Y'all's 10 is y'all's 10, right? Like, so I'd never
Everybody
want to feel
has
like I'm
different
criticizing
places.
other people. Sometimes I slightly shame the men for like not doing anything right, but I'm just trying to get help, y'all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why don't other people do stuff? I mean, they do, but like, why don't people bucket like I bucket? I don't know. I do know, but I mean, it's just who I am. Like, here's the thing is also, you know, it was kind of like, I was also in the circumstances where things like were kind of crashing anyways, but like, I mean, here's the deal is, I'll be honest. I mean, you know, I really want to go off here, but like, I can't really say what I want to say here, but like, these people are lucky because we're doing this peacefully. But like, so aside from the rash decisions I decided to make, which, you know, now it's very peaceful and all this, like, why don't people do stuff? I don't know, because they hope someone else will. They don't feel capable, you know, so on and so forth. To me, it was simple. You know, I used, you know, what I really feel is most effective. And you know what I have ready to launch now, because I just got to a new safe place to set up this temporary studio, and I'm about to release a groundbreaking platform called Organized Safety. But all I know is that I saw in 1995 when Valerie Wolf, who was a dissociative trauma therapist, you know, and she presented at the, you know, presidential congressional, you know, hearing. And she presented, you know, these, you know, victims of child mind control, trauma, torture, conditioning, right? And, you know, they presented the blindly corroborating information from all this. So, you know, when I defected, when this was going real bad, I, you know, had been operations manager for a section and, you know, trained a lot of people and dealt with certain things and was, you know, won't go too deep in here. But so, you know, I already had a list of assets and other things and, you know, vast knowledge of the infrastructure. And for example, like, I'm talking just like a guy here, but you got to understand, like, you know, split personality, like, I can go into a mode here and be a different person. No one wants me to be that guy. It's very hard to go to that place. It's uncomfortable. I'm just talking, right? But like, you know, so, you know, I already had information. So, you know, one of the first things I did was, okay, you know, I got out, I lived a little bit, and, you know, because I knew it was going to go bad, and collected myself. And, you know, I started networking and put a plea to unite and, you know, send it to nationwide dissociative trauma therapists and say, you know, hey, do you have people naming stuff? Can we put it together safely? Blah, 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 blah. And kind of like see, you know, what's coming up. Everybody's throwing names in the hat. Once we see something come up so many times, you know, that's merits it further investigation at least. You know, I was like, I know y'all can't just tell your client stuff because, you know, client confidentiality and you want to be respectful. I was like, but maybe if someone's ready, you ask them to submit it, blah, 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 blah. Then I was in all these survivor groups and networking with people. There's certain, not necessarily code names, but there's certain things from the programs. You know, I'll get on the different forums and Reddit, back then Facebook, everything, and throw out certain keywords, kind of go fishing for people like me. There's people like me fishing, connect through that, talk a little bit, start connecting, and, you know, started this called, you know, Organized Safety. And essentially what it became was, you know, where people would submit perpetrators, locations, events, if they have certain things. There's certain people that program people for a living, and some of them will even have signature marks. It's disgusting stuff. It's disgusting stuff, including, you know, mutilating certain parts of genitalia or something like that. I mean, they have signatures that they do. You know, I mean, it's messed up. So anyways, you know, just stuff that's like identifying like that. So, you know, we started getting that and started getting a database. Then someone that, you know, I associate, you know, turned it into a geo database where everything starts getting really, you know, branched out. That was in 2016. You know, and we've just been building it since then. So why did I decide to do something? I mean, you know, like, it wasn't even to decide to do something. I mean, you know, it was automatic. As soon as it was like this, it's like, okay, this is the thing to do now. The only thing is like, okay, let me decide to do something smart, you know, and less reactive. But yeah, it's just, why did I do something? Because I honestly, from what I saw, there was no one competent enough out there doing this. Everybody's looking to the next guy. Everybody's trusting this. And the people I saw that were doing something, either in my opinion weren't doing something enough, or most of them were compromised, corrupt, or capped in some way. And you got to understand, if one person is taking everybody's attention and is only willing to go this far, sure, they might be doing something good, but they can still gatekeep at that position, because if they're taking everybody and keeping someone that else will take it all the way, like, hey, you're intercepting and gatekeeping at this point. We need people that are willing to go all the way with this. There's just so much out there, and so much infiltrators, so many charlatans, so much fake bullshit. So I was like, okay, I gotta do something. All this. I'm coming back now because in 2014, when I was taking direct action, and that was with other people like me that were working compartmentalized units, and we were doing direct raids on crimes against humanity. And anyways, back to doing something. I want to make it clear, I've approached the proper channels in this. I've reported through FBI. I used to work back now, was I a card-carrying agent? No. Was I a contractor? Yes. With Homeland Security investigations, through National Security Council. I've worked with all these agencies, in varying capacities, or at least been contracted to jobs under them for different parts of time. And I've talked with the different bureaucrats. I've talked with people in the AARO that's getting into UAP stuff, which ties in with this. It's just the Black Project, same dirty club. I've talked with people at the SSCI, the Senate Select Committee for Intelligence, which is the successor of the Church Committee, who were the people that had the hearings on MKUltra, right? So I've talked to them. I've talked to their advisors. I've talked to the House Oversight Committee. And I've talked to a handful of other people, as far as at FBI, that should be actually the ones in charge of prosecuting this, and so on and so forth. It's such an ugly situation. Most of these people are there because they play ball. They understand the cap. They're not willing to fight. They're not willing to risk it. They're not doing anything. They couldn't keep anybody safe. It's just it's embarrassing. I'm sorry. I understand you have to support your family, but do you know how many people are being affected by you at least being inept? Look, if you're not malicious, you're negligent. This is going on. You can't face it. It's disgusting. So I go through these channels too. Right now, what we're doing is we're building up all this blindly corroborating data in a body of evidence. Once there's enough hits on certain things, right, we get a liaison, we get everybody that's naming it, bring that forward in order to leverage to make sure the mechanisms in place will actually prosecute, because a lot of these people try to bury it. That was the problem. People who report all the Epstein reports, it gets buried. He gets a sweetheart deal, right? You got NIGARD. You have everything that happened at the Catholic school, the Catholic Church. You have LDS. You have Jehovah's Witnesses. The Boy Scouts, which is tied in with state, and Eagle Scouts. Huge amounts of abuse. How many times does this stuff get reported? Larry Nassar, right? At the limits, Sandusky with the wrestling, Penn State. What's going on with all this? You see what I'm saying? So that's why, instead of people possibly having a hard time when they report, sometimes people that have trauma will report, and that can be traumatic, right? Then it won't even be effective. Some people might even get retaliated for reporting. Now we have a system to where they can just leave an email, whether it be Proton Mail, they can leave a phone number. It could be a temporary, voice over internet protocol number, or they can just leave a tip. But obviously, if it's just a tip, that's one thing. But, if you're willing to at least leave a private way to communicate you after that, if we find blindly corroborating evidence and then we get a substantial amount, then we can get the liaison, bring everybody together, say, look, okay, what did people experience? What are the criminal statutes? What is the burden of proof on these criminal statutes? Can we pursue? Okay, we talk to the people in this district. How is it getting pursued? We wrap it in a bow, present it to them. If they make an excuse for not wanting to prosecute or not being able to go forward, then we have the option to go public to leverage it. Because we will not accept this, and you are looking very corrupt when this is tied in a bow and we are willing to present this evidence publicly. You understand? And then once it's to that, where it's all this blindly corroborating evidence and it's been documented and you're leveraging it publicly to things, people don't have to worry about getting sued. How you're going to get sued, you got 10 blind corroborating people, shut up. That ain't happening. And also, it's a slam dunk civil lawsuit already when you have 10 people that are blindly corroborating that don't know each other, then everything's been handled through, it's just that's it. So that's what we're in the process of doing, because, most of these men of these agencies, they're just men. They got a family and all that. Most of these people aren't malicious, and they might be fighting everything they can. If they might be the human trafficking, the person in charge of this human trafficking, they might be doing everything they can, but there's a little red tape here or there. They're doing their job, and it's hard, but they are seeing results in doing stuff. But if it ever gets to this organized stuff, that's it, cut off for whatever reason, little red tape. It's not hard to control a few things. Again, it ties in with classified operations. We have the most disciplined, the most trained, and the best protocols that are put in place over a long period of time. These people are not new to this.
I mean, so it kind of seems like that's what happened with the finders. Is all of a sudden some police started poking around, and all of a sudden, bam, they just stop talking about it, just drop it.
So here's the deal: is they come in. There can be a variety of things. If whatever police are a good man and wanted to keep going, that weren't part of like a brotherhood that they have an oath to that overrides that they were wanting to be loyal to and aren't listening to shut up. If they aren't, whatever. Here's what it comes down to. Listen, man. This is going nowhere. We're going to drop national security on this. You don't understand what's behind this. You and your family will pay with your life for this if you decide to pursue this. Are you going to push this, or are you going to shut the fuck up so we can get on with things? What are they going to do?
Yeah.
What are you going to let your family die for nothing? Hell
Yeah.
no. Hell no. I wouldn't blame them. And that's what it can come down to. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, it doesn't take much. Like, if these people want to, they'll tell them nice ways. They'll give them pretty reasons that people can accept and then walk away from this and try to have a clean conscience, right? But if you keep pushing that issue and you know it, they're going to give you the fucking business. Look, you are going to be killed and your family's going to be killed fucking first. Because it has to be an example. You don't understand what we're stopping behind this. They'll still always throw in at the end of a threat, always throw in like some way excuse where it makes sense and we're actually doing the right thing. You just don't understand the amount of lives and the balance sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like, hiding behind national security, it's not hard to talk to somebody, especially if you come through with the proper credentials. They're going to be like, oh, fuck, shit, I don't know what's going on. Oh, these people just gave me the business. Holy shit. Like you're going to want to go home and hug your wife and kids.
Yeah. Oh shit! I just stepped in some shit real quick.
You never can blame these people, and you don't think these people these people. It's common knowledge, like like whatever happened, right, with JFK, like and I'm not saying something didn't happen. I'm just saying whatever happened, like it's enough to look at like, oh, they can take out a president. What am I about to do? You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, so like I'd never blame individual people. But that's the thing is if more people were doing something, more people cared, less people were like, oh, that's the way it was. Oh, less people were like, oh, someone's job somewhere is handling it. Then the, lone dissenters, it wouldn't be so hazardous,
Yeah. So that does want to lead me to this question, which I've been pretty curious about. And this is a pretty difficult question because it's going to be so different for everyone. But what is it that we can do? Because you look at this and this looks like a big pile of shit that, I mean, an individual doesn't seem like it can do much. And obviously you made just the point that if more people were doing something, then it wouldn't be so strenuous for the individuals. But what is it that the average person can start doing?
Gotcha. All right. So here's, because I've thought about this for quite a bit. If individuals want to do something, they have to understand that this is about stopping crimes against humanity and stopping high corruption. And that, unfortunately, the way the world runs this, so they have to put this first in front of any of their ego. Because you get online, especially, let's be honest, most of this is happening online. Of course, it happens around people and in your families and stuff like that, but like it can be easy to get into arguments with people, get defensive, aggressive. So you have to understand that everybody has their reasons for not wanting to believe. And some might be because of their peers and their family doesn't. Some might be because, it's literally cognitive dissonance. It's so horrible they don't want to think about it. And if they do, they're going to care about it. They feel powerless. It's just an inconvenient, uncomfortable situation, right? Why would they want to put them through? There's a natural cognitive dissonance and all this. But so what it really comes down to is, is how can you communicate with people? Like, it's a lot. It's a lot. So you have to find a way to get the foot in the door, right? You have to find a way to represent this in a way that's credible to the layman to start to get them in there. If you're talking to specific demographics, the certain demographics will have different biases, right? Like some people might have a hang up about politics. Some people might have a hang up about, they don't want to hear about trafficking, but they're interested in military history, right? Like, so like, I might be able to go on the military history end. Like either way, what I usually do, the thing is we got to talk amongst ourselves and spread awareness. And like, people are going to want to be fighting about whatever they're fighting about. You might have to, just for the sake of argument, eat one and just be like, okay, whatever, like go, not even go along with whatever crap they're dealing with, but like just in order to like level with them, make a good faith attempt to level with people when you're trying to talk to them to raise awareness. There's so much fighting. If the people clearly with you, like really humbling yourself, just like making a honest, good faith, obvious, good attempt, no backhanded stuff, just like to really talk to someone. If they're showing bad faith and they're not going to talk, don't engage. Don't even waste your time. It's over with. And you also see me fighting on the internet, but I do a little bit of that for cathartic reasons, but also kind of just to show other survivors that I stand up for survivors. I try to stop once it gets out of line. But anyway, so like, if the people aren't, going to get it, they're not going to get it. But like, the main thing is it's a lot to bring to people. It's three things to stress. One would be that a lot of the people that experience this are saying the same things and they don't know each other. And the things that they're saying isn't like common stuff on the internet. It's not like tacking on to, wide view conspiracy theories or anything like that. Like a lot of people they only know it from where they've heard it. And if all you've heard it was from on the mainstream media, of course you're automatically going to think it's that. Like, it makes sense. I'm not angry at the people that think Pizzagate was just some dummy that went into Comet Pizza with a shotgun or whatever, or whatever it was. But I'm not mad at them because I understand. What do they know other than what they were told and what everybody around them? Like, it makes sense. That's how people work, But you're like, well, hold on. This is way back. Like, did you know in 1995 there was ACHRE? There was a presidential committee hearing to where it was presented that they were, training children through these horrid techniques. Did you know that the ritual abuse statutes provide an exemption for government research projects? And basically they're doing things, in a really weird manner because they do really weird trauma that splits their mind, and it goes back to declassified experiments you can actually look at. You go back to G.H. Estabrooks, which, explains in the 40s, hypnotizing people to split their mind for marine intelligence. I mean, there's so much. If it's just, you can just explain something, the small part, something that's so credible. The 1995 ACHRE video testimony, in my opinion, is irrefutable. And I don't know if you've seen that where I play the clips on my stuff. I mean, how do you refute that? It's like, and Bill Clinton did a whitewashed apology, but like, this is on record, and like, all the corroborating evidence was given from over 40 nationwide therapists and hundreds of clients that didn't know each other, the same code words, blah, 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 blah. So anyways, I mean, just try to present something like that. You got Dr. Naru, who spoke out of turn in like 1975, talking about how they were taking people from prisons and brainwashing them to be assassins, and then placing them at consulates and other places like that. There's been a few things, but the 1995 ACHRE is kind of like the heaviest thing. And then like, it's just like basically like, look, unfortunately it ties in. It ties in with. Bottom line, it just, you got to know what you can and can't say to them. But you show them the 1995 ACHRE, some clips from that, and it's like, it's like this stuff's going on, and there's like a huge community of people that are trying to get something done about it, but it ties in with some corrupt national security programs. It's the same people back with Oliver North, where they were, smuggling all that coke and stuff. I mean, it's the exact same thing. As a matter of fact, just for the record, and I showed, this stuff because I already whistle blew this back in like 2013, 14, and that place got shut down and all this. But, I was running an airstrip that was set up in the 80s and was utilized for some of that cocaine smuggling, and other things. So, I mean, and that was still going on, into, 2000 to, up to 2010 about. So, anyways, it's right under people's nose. I mean, you just got to find a way to communicate with people and to represent this and to cut through their individual bias, find a way to relate with them. Just understand that even if they're the stupidest person, the most annoying, the most hateful, ultimately they're not your enemy. And unless they're putting you or your family at danger and your loved ones, they're probably not worth engaging unless if you're setting an example or actually making a point. Once you've determined there's bad faith communication and no one's actually trying to be productive, just move on. And I'll be the first hypocrite. I'm just being honest though. Like, we need to find a way to try to communicate with each other and like avoid the conflict and fighting, because there are ones that are pressing us all. And even if you don't feel it right now, they are putting you and your family and your future in great jeopardy. And they have affected your quality of life in ways you'll never get to know. I mean, it's just so much. So it affects everybody. Take some time. What I'd recommend doing is finding what group that you identify with that that you think you might be able to get through, but that doesn't know as much. Find where you can fit into it, because different people listen to different people. You might have an angle with it. Just think who's most likely to listen and how you can get through to them, and don't waste time fighting on the internet with people who aren't going to listen anyways. A lot of that's noise. A lot of them aren't in good faith, and some of them are bots, which are getting more and more advanced. And I won't even go into this, but literally, when I was young, I was trained literally when I was literally 12 years old. And, back with like MySpace and stuff like this, I was trained to make across MySpace and other accounts and all sorts of stuff, starter techniques, to where I would build up as many accounts as I could and make different posts in different categories and different genres, and build up one as a middle-aged woman, build up one as an older man, build up one as a person that cared about pets, build up one that was an engineer, right? All this different stuff in order to bring them in for different stuff, psyops. Now this is done on a wide scale with bots and, artificial intelligence, and then you can have one person go in and manually do it to like really start an argument, and you'll see like, who is this? And you'll look, and like some of the stuff will seem, their background will all seem kind of like, a little bit too robotic, but then like it will actually seem like someone's arguing with you. They'll go in, they'll just have a bank of temporary stuff. You can buy them nowadays as a layman. Like there's all sorts of stuff. So I wouldn't waste my time engaging with anything that sees this too bad faith. Bust them up, make something funny, or say what you got to say and move on, because we're all wasting a lot of time. But all we can do is just find a way to communicate, find where we fit in, and try to peacefully raise awareness. That's the number one thing. And then send them directly to the sources. The number one place I say personally for a source right now, which would be a place called the Imagination Podcast, which, don't be fooled by the name Imagination Podcast, right? But that's on YouTube, and that's she's on Twitter's The Emmapreneur. It's at The Emmapreneur, yes. And she has probably the world's largest library right now of survivor testimony. She has over 100 individual survivors and over 200 testimonies. We're talking about full length. She lets them talk, and they get it out. People have different varying degrees of being able to articulate this. They have different degrees of involvement. There are different stages of recovery. It's important to remember, I went against what I was working for in 2008, right? Really found out what was going on in 2011, was imprisoned until 2013, 14, was severely injured, had bad stuff happen. Then I've been recovering still since then, right? I've been really recovering since 2008, especially since 2011, right? And so people have different styles of talking, all this. And some people also, it's possible they still believe lies or tricks, because really elaborate methods are done. Stuff's compartmentalized. They'll tell people one story, so if they think they're whistleblowing and saying something, they can just identify the leak through that story. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, there's all sorts of different sort of counterintelligence methods that are weaved into this. This is done by professionals. This is intelligent design. Some people, there's so much. But anyways, the Emmapreneur show, the Imagination Podcast, you start listening to these people, some of them might be hard to listen to. You might not resonate with some, whatever you want to say, but like, the same stuff's getting named. You're going to start putting it together, and it's not all stuff that's public knowledge. It's not all stuff that's already talked about on the internet, and then from there too, you start getting, you're a survivor, something like that. What we're talking about behind closed doors, like, there's big things getting ready to happen, and people are getting more empowered, more comfortable. There's more of us speaking out, and we're networking and taking a more common sense approach. We have big problems though with the people that are running these organizations that are supposedly against trafficking, and the leaders in these movements that are supposedly like doing something about this are tied in with the perpetrators, or inept and allowed to be in that position because the organizations are controlled by perpetrators. But we're talking about, former generals, stuff like this, like, I worked around these people. Like, no, you don't understand. I left white hat operations. All that was PR, making some busts for PR, right? Making it sound good to the people, cleaning it up again, moving it over, doing this, consolidating it, absorbing what we could into the network, controlling the trade, business as usual in the back. What do you think this is? They know what they can't touch. They know what's hands off. And you better believe someone that's a lifelong in general that hasn't been speaking about this already, they are all invested in the national security aspect. They've already been tied up sampling the goods from certain assets. Like, dude, you know what I'm saying? And I'm going to address this at length somewhere else because I don't want to kind of put too much drama anywhere. But like, people got to watch out. There are people that are either inept, controlled, or just like really aren't going after what they need to, that are running a lot of these organizations. And we need to be able to network and get our voices heard so we can address this, because real survivors that actually had firsthand experience are getting dismissed as like trolls, and like everybody's getting like, smashed on. They don't want to speak on the internet because of the mess that the internet is, and everybody's going off online gossip, and like people are worshiping and idolizing other people. It's like, listen to the people that went through this. Do you know, like, my associates, I'm the one that went on the internet. They think I'm an idiot. They're like, what? Like, and also like it made it dangerous for them. Like you got to understand, like I had to split off from, really my best for, I don't even want to say that, but like, I mean, my people, dude, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like they don't like this internet stuff. They don't feel very strongly about it. If stuff gets good and I get a platform and we get to like really say, like really got here, yo, they'll come say something. They'll put their name behind it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And these are people that are career military and stuff like that. But anyways, I'm going off here, but yep, that's about it.
Well, hey, I think that's a perfect place to wrap right there. I completely agree with you. I think there's very clearly some people and some bots as well that that come in to muddy the water flat out. There's actually a clip I've been working on trying to find. I can't find the actual clip itself, but it's a clip of Obama talking about all you have to do is just come into a civilization and throw enough fake stuff out there, throw enough conspiracy theorizing. It's some speech he did within the last few years. If anyone listening to this does have that clip, go ahead and send it to me on Twitter. I want to blast that everywhere because he's talking about poisoning the well and making it so difficult for people to even understand exactly what the truth is, which is, in my opinion, and you might agree with this, is exactly what things like QAnon is. It's a complete bullshit psyop. It's meant to, steer people away from the truth.
The waters are so the waters are so muddied, and like, because you got QAnon, you got Q, you got, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And when you go into that, and no one's saying that there aren't some legitimate aspects of something that came
Yeah,
through.
yeah.
The waters, and that's the best disinformation and whatever. And like, if someone's putting something anonymously out, some information, of course, bad people are going to try to copy that output and then put bad information out too. So like the waters are so muddied. Yeah. Y'all just start listening to the people that were involved in this. That's all it takes. Stop listening to these organizations. If your people have been on TV your whole life, I would not be going to them the first time, just now it's safe for people to talk about. People have been talking about this stuff. It's been getting covered up. It's been buried down. Y'all haven't heard about it, but now you can. I don't know. What are you going to say?
Yeah. Beware the Mockingbird. That shit is out there. And it's out there in full force. So on that note, I definitely want to say, this is so important to me, which is why I invited you on. You're always more than welcome on this platform. And anyone listening, anyone who has actually experienced any of this, regardless of what level, reach out to me. You are more than welcome on my platform. This is such an not just interesting topic, but it's an important topic that does need to get out there. And that's what I'm trying to do here, is trying to get this platform built up. And trust me, it's been hard shadow banning and anything. I mean, I've reached all the qualifications for monetization. That's never going to happen. So everyone, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Let's blow this up. Let's get this out so Gray will come back. So on that note, hey, Gray, let everyone know where they can find you.
Thank you. And if I may, I would just like to say to this corrupt conglomerate of cowards, I know that some of you don't want to continue what you're doing, and the habitat is not as accepting as possible, but I would openly invite a peaceful discussion of how we could accelerate the transition of power back to the people. There's different ways that this could happen, and there's a lot of people that are like me and that are with me that would almost prefer to handle this in a different manner. But it's enough. It's enough. There's been such a great cost of life and of humanity, and no one truly wins. You all know that even the people at the top are used. This is a disgusting cycle. So I just invite everybody to Do the right thing. And everybody can accept. If you truly dismiss that hate in your heart and show good faith attempts to make things right, that would be accepted. And I'll encourage survivors like me to understand that everybody has their own history. You know, we're not offering a free pass to anybody, but it's clear if it's really in someone's heart to, you know, do the right thing and change their ways and leave this. It's not easy. And, you know, the deeper and the rougher you were, the harder it would be to cross over. So, you know, we have to accept that because alternative is not good for anybody. And there's a lot already in motion. You know, one of the main reasons I'm speaking out now is to, you know, rally public support to do this much softer, you know, because there's a lot going on in the background. It's not what people have heard on the internet, and it's a lot more messy. But you know, we're destroying ourselves. This is stupid, you know, and for who and for what? So, anyways, you can find me on the transition to social media. I can't believe I'm here. You can find me on subscribe and like. You can find me on YouTube at Gray Area Operator, and the channel is the Gray Area. You can find me at Twitter on Gray Area Monarch. And then I'm sure I have stuff linked from there. You go in the YouTube description, but those are the two main. And I have some videos on there, and I'm about to record some more, mostly over my history and some stuff, but I'm really about to lay some things out. I've recently went through some, you know, some problems in my personal life from when I spoke out. Imagine that. But it'll be okay, and I'm going to put out some interesting stuff. And I love y'all, and I'm actually a nice guy.
Well, hey, I want to thank you so much for coming on. Honestly, this was absolutely incredible, and I really appreciate your time. Everyone else, like I said, make sure and hit that subscribe, hit that like, all that stuff that we have to say. I'm shadow banned pretty much anywhere you can find me. Top three platforms, you know, YouTube. I'm also Rumble, Odyssey, all of those video channels to make sure that there is an outlet somewhere. Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram are the top three platforms where you can find me. Other than that, I always like to end my interviews with this question because I love getting everyone else's answers, because everyone else have a different answer, and we'll end on this one. But in your opinion, why does liberty matter?
Oh, no. Man. I mean, I'm over here with, you got me. You got me, man. I have no good constructed answer to this. I'll go on a rant about freedom and liberty and justice. It's, you know, it just, I can't even have a reason. It's just everything has to be. It has to be. There's no other way for people.
Hey, I think that's the perfect answer, honestly, because I completely agree. So, on that note, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Make sure and share this if you found it useful. And hang out, Gray, for a minute. We'll wrap this up on the back end. And everyone else, until next time, stay free, my friends.
You there?